Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/voicesinmyhead. That's audibletrial.com/voicesinmyhead. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. That's audibletrial.com/voicesinmyhead. Give it a try today. Welcome to Voices in My Head, the official podcast of me, Rick Lee James. I'm a recording artist, a singer, a songwriter, an author, a worship leader, and an ordained minister in the Church of the Nazarene. The Voices in My Head podcast is where I discuss music, movies, books, pop culture, theology, and more with friends, colleagues, and sometimes just by myself. Now make sure to let me know what you think of today's episode by leaving me a review on iTunes, or by tweeting at me at Rick Lee James on Twitter. And please join my mailing list at rickleejames.com, where you can receive an email every time a new episode is released. And by the way, in case you're interested in a daily dose of kindness and encouragement beyond this podcast, I also run the Twitter account at Mr. Rogers Say, where I post daily quotes from Fred Rogers, one of the voices in my head. Well, I guess that's it for the intro, so sit back, relax, and listen to the latest episode of Voices in My Head. From her debut at age 16, Jaci Velasquez experienced an amazing roller coaster career. She had #1 hit songs, platinum albums, Grammy nominations, but almost as quickly as she rose to fame, she lost it all. Her record label, her reputation, and even her marriage. In her new book, When God Rescripts Your Life, Jaci shares her journey of ups and downs with grace, humor, and trust that the story God is writing is so much richer than any story we could have dreamed of ourselves. Jaci Velasquez, welcome to Voices in My Head.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you. I was glad that we were able to connect and that you were able to read the book, and yeah, thank you so much.
Well, I so appreciate you sending it over. It really was a great read. And, actually reading about your radio hosting skills, I'm going to ask that this morning you don't out-host me as we talk together today.
But, don't worry. Trust me. I'll tell you what, I learned a lot doing radio, just how to condense your thoughts into really short kind of blurbs. So it's good. But it's something you can forget over time.
Sure.
So hopefully I won't mess up.
Oh, it's going to be great. Well, as you know, we recorded a couple of weeks ago on my other podcast, Welcome to the Neighborhood, a Mr. Rogers tribute podcast. And
yes.
I think I told you the other day when we talked briefly, but since that episode released, that podcast has broken into the top 100 on iTunes. And I think that particular episode went all the way to like number 42. I haven't checked lately. But you were no small part of that, so I have to thank you for helping that to happen. It was great to have you and so many talented guests on that podcast. And your version of You Can Never Go Down the Drain is delightful if our listeners haven't heard it, but you did a great job with it.
Thank you. It was so much fun. I just liked the concept of doing something that was so out of my wheelhouse and so intricate that it was just so much fun. I mean, you can't go wrong with Mr. Rogers songs.
It's really hard to go wrong in that regard. That's for sure. Well, Jaci, again, we're here to talk about your book today and what you've done. I'm excited to go a little more in depth with who you are today and not just talk about Fred Rogers, although I feel like we could probably do that all day if we wanted.
For sure.
But I'd love to start by just sharing, if you don't mind, Amy Grant's endorsement of your book. I think it's a great jumping on point. She writes, Jaci's recollections of her life are worth reading for two reasons. She doesn't sugarcoat the gritty details, which is a good payoff for the curious reader, and in telling her story, she finds the wonder and mystery of God's endless ability to turn our chaos into beauty. So my question for you, after reading what Amy wrote, was it a scary thing for you at all to sit down and write the story of your life in such an honest way?
Yes, it was scary because you have to, when you think about a book and you think about your life, it plays out in your head, but it's different to see it on paper. Because once you see it on paper, it's real. And then once it releases into other people's hands, you can't take it back because it's forever there. So of course that was scary, but I knew that in this day and age, we seek and we need authenticity, because so many times we feel like everybody else got the memo and we didn't. And the truth is, I mean, we all have faced challenges. We are facing challenges. We're going to face challenges. What do we do with those things? What do we learn from them? Can we learn from them? And I think that was for me a part of why I wanted it to be authentic and be real, and just I have no need to sugarcoat things because why would I? I mean, that would be in essence lying. So so to me, telling the truth is so important, and it's so valuable. Even just for my personality type, it's just really valuable to be honest and to share our brokenness. Because when you think of being broken, you think of, oh, that's shameful, that's embarrassing, which it is. You're like, oh, this is embarrassing. I'm ashamed of me. But who is what you have to get out of ourselves and think of, what can this story do to help somebody else walk down their road and walk through their challenge, and to feel like they're just not doing it alone. We all have gone through it.
Yeah. Well, just this morning I posted a Fred Rogers quote that I think applies here, actually. And it says, your wounded heart is a beautiful heart, is what he said. And I think that is so true, because if you were sugarcoating things and you weren't giving us your full honest self, we wouldn't have the benefit of seeing the true beauty that's there, often in the woundedness. And so I appreciate the way that you were able to share your story. It was a very compelling read. And, your singing career, you write about it, it took off with a platinum album when you were only 16 years old. And that must have just been an incredible joy in your life. What was that like as a 16-year-old?
It was surreal as a 16-year-old. It was very surreal. I remember thinking, is this my life? Or am I watching a movie? Because it felt like a movie. So for me, watching, having all that go on, it just felt like it was somebody else's life and I was playing her part. But then at a certain point during that time, like when stuff was happening so fast and success was rolling in so quick, it became a blur. Like if I look back at that time frame, people will say, do you remember when we went to XYZ? And I'm like, I can't even remember, because just became a blur during that time.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, it probably is as joyful as those moments are, and like being on the double words and all those things for the first times, I wonder, can you really enjoy it in the moment, or is it just so big and almost larger than you at the time? Is it something that can really be enjoyed, or you have to almost do it in retrospect?
Actually, I think for me personally, you have to do it in retrospect, because at the time, first of all, you feel inadequate. You feel just so grateful that you're even in the same building with some of these people, such as Amy Grant.
Yeah.
It's just like larger than life. It's so much bigger than me or than any certain person. So it's just so exciting. And you feel so honored that God would choose you, because there's tons of amazing singers in this world. The fact that I was able to walk that path, that he chose me to walk that path, is still just, is so humbling. Yeah. Truly. It's humbling to me.
Well, I would think it would just be so fulfilling to know that you had been a part of, the spiritual growth and development of so many people. For a while, I was a youth pastor, and I would go to different events with teens, and sometimes there would be seeing, not exactly talent competitions, but things where teens would come and share different songs and things. And I can't tell you the number of times that songs like On My Knees, I Get On My Knees would come by, and I thought, this is really implanted itself. It's not just Jaci singing anymore. This is really something that God's using and planting in the hearts of people's hearts and minds, and it's really a beautiful thing. And that's got to be hard to even describe, I would think.
It is hard to describe, but like recently there was a young lady who came up to me and she said that 2 of her songs, got her through cancer, and got her through, was it her husband's cancer? It was her and her husband's, they both cancer. And I can't remember if it was either her husband or her father. I can't remember that part. But she said that On My Knees and Flower in the Rain, they got her through those, that time in her life, because she would just listen to it over and over again while she was going through chemo. Wow. And I think to myself, when people say your song, I always go, yeah, it was my song, but it really was, it was not me. It was the Lord, just using me because I was the one to say yes. And a lot of times God is just waiting for people, for us as believers we say we want to be used. We want to be used. Use me, Lord. Use me, Lord. But then when he says, okay, do this, we kind of stand back and we go, no, I don't want to do that. No. And I just happen to be the one to say yes. Yeah. So, and I think that that's actually a challenge for each person listening. Yeah. If you are asking God to use you, be ready to say yes. So, and you have to walk in obedience, and that's hard to do. Obedience is difficult because 98.7% of the time when he asks you to do something, it's going to be something you don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like following Jesus means that more often than not, you get problems you wouldn't have had if you didn't decide to follow him in the first place.
It's true. Well, he never said, hey, come walk with me. It's going to be super easy. Yeah. Hey, come follow me. It's going to be super easy. He said, come suffer with me. Yeah. Because it's a lot of times it is suffering. But see, what we have to remember is we're not working towards today, towards the now life. We're working towards eternity. And that's why he calls us to be fishers of men, so that these people will have eternity with him as well.
Sure. So. Well, you mentioned suffering, and that gets me to the next thing that I wanted to talk about with you. To many people, your story might seem kind of like a fairy tale, and just sort of your meteoric rise at a young age and all the success that you had experienced. But there were problems and challenges that were also hard for you to face as well. And you write about in the book, you say, ignoring what we don't like in our lives does not make those things invisible. It just puts off the inevitable. And the inevitable, and some of those inevitable things were kind of happening all around you, and you wrote about kind of being surrounded by people who would tell you yes a lot. Would you want to elaborate just a little bit more on sort of that experience, especially at a young age, because I think that would be a hard thing for any young person to come in contact with.
Oh, for sure. Like 16, 17, 18 years old, for me, because of the success and because of the financial success of everything that was happening, I mean, you're paying everybody. So if you think of people around you as being your employees, like you're their paycheck, you're going to have a lot of yes people around you. Yes, that looks great. Yes, that's a great idea. Yes, I'll be at your house. Let's paint. Yes. So it's very difficult when somebody finally says no in those situations. And I think for me as a young person, I could have handled it so much better, so much different. But I was young. And that's the thing. We make mistakes. We make poor choices. And thankfully, the God that we serve can take those mistakes, take those choices, and just and rework them, rescript them to be something better than we could have planned for our own lives. Like for me, I wanted to do a movie called Chasing Poppy. I got an audition. It was my first audition. And I got the part. I was like, whoa, this is going to be awesome. I get to do a movie on 20th Century Fox, like a film. Yeah. It was a romantic comedy. The original rating was going to be PG-13. And so the director and the writers, they changed a bunch of things for me. So it would be PG. So I could do it. So then the yes people around me were saying, yes, 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 Jaci. But there were a few no people. One of them being my boyfriend at the time, the second one being my mom, the third one being my manager. But in my brattiness, in my very selfish human way, I was like, no, you're wrong. This is what I'm supposed to do. Because oftentimes we confuse our dreams with God's will and God's calling. So I was like, this is going to be a dream come true. I'm going to get to make a movie. This will be awesome. And now looking back, I think, wow, Jaci, yeah, that was a really poor choice. What were you thinking? What were you doing? Because when we make a poor choice, a lot of times we follow it up with another poor choice, trying to fix the poor choice we made previously. Instead of allowing God to do what he can do. We try to DIY our mistakes. That's what it is. And I know that I did. So for that film, I didn't listen to the no people. I was like, no, I know better. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is God's calling. This is his will for my life. Yeah. So I did the film, and it had a lot of backlash. A lot of radio stations and events started kind of dropping my music and dropping me as a performer at their events. Yeah. And so I was like, oh no, I've got to fix this. Right?
Right.
And do you hear that narrative? I have to fix this. Okay. So that was my DIY attempt at fixing a poor choice with yet another poor choice. Yeah. So I'd broken up with that boyfriend who said no, because, he was not telling me giving me the answers I wanted to hear.
Right.
I got married a little bit about 11 months after the movie, a few months after the movie came out. And I married, I always say I accidentally got married and intentionally divorced. I married him to try and subconsciously, I married him to make it look like I was safe again for the whole family. Like, Jaci's grown up. She's gotten married. She made a poor choice. It's okay. But, so I accidentally got married and intentionally divorced. We were married for about a year and a couple months. So that was my DIY attempt at fixing mistakes. But then what happens when you make a mistake and another mistake and you're trying to fix it all yourself? The problem is a lot of times we run away. Yeah. We run away. But the problem with running away is we take us with us. So that's what that whole delaying the inevitable. At some point, we have to stop, turn around, and face the critics, face our poor choices, face our mistakes. We can't keep running.
Sure. Well, do you mind if I ask a question real quick in the midst of this? I'm loving hearing your story again and just kind of your perspective on things. But something occurred to me as well. Talking about the movie Chasing Poppy, to me, I think I would be in the same place you were, honestly, as far as like, wow, what a great, opportunity to get to be in a film. And I love romantic comedies and this will be fun, and I think in my mind, the backlash that you experienced for doing this film, I think mostly because it wasn't just 100%, quote unquote Christian movie. And I think about that in the context of like, okay, I know an awful lot of Christians and they're not watching exclusively Christian-made movies, and they're not listening to exclusively Christian music or any other things. And on one level, and I understand you feel like it was a huge mistake for you, but on the other level, I think what a hypocritical type crowd, on some level, because these are the people who will go out to, see whatever the latest rom-com is or watch something like that. And they don't have necessarily that kind of judgment on anybody else who are in those films or even watching it themselves. And it's one of those head scratchers for me that I'll come back to, like, why are we so judgmental of people who are trying to do something maybe in a little more mainstream and hopefully do it in an excellent way. Now, I think since that time, I am seeing more Christians in secular things, and I actually kind of applaud that. I think it's a good thing. I want everybody to do the best art that they can do and do it for the glory of God, whether it has this Christian label or not. But I also wonder, like, that must have been incredibly painful for you to have sort of an audience of people who were really loving what you were doing to all of a sudden, probably it just felt like a complete betrayal on your end on some ways.
Well, I think at that time, let's say, was that 2000, came out in 2002 or something like that. I think the industry was different. Mm-hmm. It was a lot more, well, first of all, the Christian industry at that time was a much bigger industry. It was a huge machine.
Sure.
But I think that it was a different mentality back then. Mm-hmm. And, just 18 years ago or 17 years ago, it was a different mentality. So I think nowadays it wouldn't be such a big deal. But at that time, I think it was also parents thinking, oh, wait, she's doing something secular, mm-hmm. but my daughter looks up to her. She must have lost her faith, and they're trying to protect their kids, which I understand now that I have kids. It's like, that may not be a good role model for my son or daughter. But at the time, I look back and I look at my attitude and my thought process behind mm-hmm. it. And I don't think I was my heart was in the right place because I should have taken, to whom much is given, much is required. So sometimes we have to say no to something that looks so shiny and pretty. Sure.
Well, and I can totally understand that perspective of it too. I just think it's interesting the way that times change, and they can change, pretty rapidly on that end. I mean, now we have sort of the opposite extreme. We have like Snoop Dogg doing gospel albums, and it's sort of this other extreme that we've gone to, and it's an interesting like sort of perspective on the other side of things. But so you write in the book again about making the movie, about rushing into a marriage that seemed pretty quick to be a mistake, and how painful that was. And I did want to interject one other thing before we get too far into the rest of your story and how God was rescripting your life. This is just almost a passing moment in your book, but I find it so interesting that when you moved to California, you moved in with a young lady named Katie Hudson. And who do we know her as today?
She's Katy Perry now.
Yes.
Katy Perry. Yes. Yes. So. It was a condo, an apartment in Beverly Hills, and, we had 2 rooms, a kitchen, and I bought a couch, and it was interesting because during that time, she was making her first, she wasn't making her first record. She was still in artist development with Glenn Ballard. So she and I had really flip-flop schedules. Mm-hmm. So I would leave the house at like 4 a.m. to be on set by, 5:30. And she would be like coming into the house. She wouldn't wake up until, 10 a.m. to be in the studio till like, 2 a.m. Mm-hmm. So we only saw each other during the weekends. And I used to wake her up in the mornings on Saturday mornings. Accidentally, I would turn on music and mm-hmm. she would just be so upset. She'd go, you woke me up. And I'm like, dude, I am so sorry. But she was fantastic. She is so funny. She is one of the funniest people I've ever met. And she can get away with saying stuff that nobody ever can get away with saying.
Is that right?
She totally can. She just has, I always thought to myself, she has the it factor. It's like, you can't put your finger on it, but some people have it. And it's really, it's a real thing. Yeah. And she always did.
Well, that was an interesting part of your story. Most people can't just say, "Well, I roomed with, Katy Perry," or however it went. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. But let's get back a little bit again to how you said there was a bit after you had done the movie and after you had been through this painful divorce, and you kind of find yourself running. And the another interesting part of your journey is you went to England for a while and literally were living in Notting Hill, the same place as the movie. And I'd love for you to tell the story about why you went to England, because that's one of the greatest stories ever. But then just some of the adventures you had there.
Okay, so after the divorce, when you have to remember the fact that I was getting married, the virgin, Jackie girl, save yourself till marriage, true love waits kind of girl. Mm-hmm. After, when I announced that I was getting married, it came out like in People magazine. There were like blurbs all over the place. So everybody knew. So then when the divorce came, I remember that Christianity Today got a hold of me and wanted to do a story on the divorce. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be public too. So of course I wanted to run away.
Yeah. Because
I knew that there was going to be lots of stuff surrounding that and lots of, criticism and questions. So instead of facing the questions, I'll just jet. So I decided to go to England to learn Spanish.
Yeah, that's it.
That was my concept. I was like, I'll just go to England because they have a great school there, Instituto Cervantes, and I can just perfect my Spanish because it may be that after this divorce gets public or after, everyone talks about it, the only thing I might have going for me is my Spanish, Latin stuff, because they don't care about, that they don't really care about whether I'm in a movie or, it's just more inspirational music.
Sure.
So I went to the motherland of English to go learn Spanish. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but the school was actually really a good school. So I would study. I went to school 4 days a week. It was like 2-hour sessions each time. And my Spanish got pretty good. I was really proud of myself that I even thought of it to go to England to learn Spanish. So.
Sure. It makes sense. If there's a good school there, do it. And it was probably a great experience to be there. It was just so funny reading about it. I went to the motherland of English to learn Spanish. So it's terrific.
I know. Well, I just figured at least, I should have gone to Spain, but I didn't know anybody in Spain.
Yeah.
Like I at least knew a few people in England. I was like, okay, cool. and I can't believe my mom didn't like throw a fit that I was moving out of the country, but she didn't. I think she knew I had to go and I had to run away.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't just things that were going on in your life too. You wrote about some other painful things. Your parents had divorced as well along the way. I feel like you just must have had an incredible weight upon your shoulders with so many things. And most of us make terrible decisions at some point in our life, but most of us don't have sort of the entire world staring at us in the goldfish bowl either when those moments happen. And one part of your story that I love is, as much as you write about your story in the book, it's also about your family and the people who were part of God Rescripting Your Story. And you have a great love story about your husband, Nick, and how he was a part of the rescripting of your life. And by the way, he sounds like an amazing person who would just be great to hang out with. The way you describe him. I wonder if you would mind just sharing a bit of the story of you two as we move on together, because you and Nick really do have a great story, and it sounds like he was just a very patient person and very persistently showing you what God was like throughout your whole story.
Oh my goodness. Can you believe it? Like I still sometimes look at him and I go, how in the world were you so patient and so, okay, so I'll tell you the story. So I had dated this guy, Nick, for a while. We broke up. I moved to England. I made a movie, got married, got divorced. Moved to England, came back to America, and I get a phone call from this boy who happens to be the same guy that I dated before I made the movie Chasing Poppy, that told me no, you shouldn't make the movie. So I pick up the phone and he goes, hey, so when are you going to leave all those bad boys and come back? Like going, first of all, I'm amazed that I felt so unworthy of him still wanting me and loving me, and still, wanting to even talk to me, because he shouldn't have even wanted to talk to me. So he said he flew in a couple of days later into Nashville and took me on a date. And then I still was not sure. I was like, I don't know. It's just too typical, right? Mm-hmm. Instead, I was ignoring the movie and the rom-com and the love story that God was trying to write for me. Yeah. And he'd been trying to write for a long time for me. But I, of course, wanted to take it all into my own hands and write the story that I thought I was supposed to be living. Yeah. So after about a few times after we had, he'd come into town and take me on dates. It was like out of nowhere, God just changed my heart completely. Yeah. And I fell so madly in love with him, like crazy love. And so I guess it was about a few months, how many months later? That was probably in August. And we got married in December. Wow. We got married quick. There are lots of details that I can't even get into. You'd have to read the book, but
sure, and please do,
there's
listeners.
So much.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that really speaks to his character, I think, when I was reading about the story of you two, was while you were married, you were touring with his band, and you were writing about, wow, he's just being so rude to me, and what he actually was doing was being very much a gentleman and keeping his distance because of how he felt about you, and he didn't want to make a wrong move. And I thought, man, that guy has some great character about him. I mean, it really did.
And he does. He does. He's got an amazing character to him. I definitely think that God has shown me just through my husband's love, the intentionality and the redemption that is the love of Jesus. Yeah. Often we think we're not worthy of his love because of the choices that we've made. Worthy of God's love because we feel dirty, we feel broken, we feel hurt, we feel unusable, we feel disposable. Yeah. But God is so good, and he is patiently waiting, ready to just take you in his arms and use you and make you new because you are beautiful to him. You are not broken. You are so worthy of his love.
Yeah, amen. Well, I want to be conscious of your time. Are you okay to go just a few more minutes with us here today?
Sure.
Okay, great. We were about at 30 minutes, and I just didn't want to take advantage of your time. But so we've gone to the place in your story where you and Nick got together, and that's a wonderful read in itself, just hearing about that and how it worked. But then God blessed you with your first child, and then another child along the way. And one of the part of God rescripting your story, and I'd love if you didn't mind just talking a little bit about it. There were some challenges with Zealand that you didn't expect along the way. And would you want to share just a little bit about that and how that was as a mother handling this?
My husband and I have been in ministry since I was 9 years old. And since he was 10, he started playing at his church. And, ministry requires communication. Mm-hmm. So our whole lives, we've been in communication ministering, okay? So I was pregnant with Zealand. I prayed for 10 fingers, 10 toes. And, when he came out, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, those are the most precious 10 fingers, 10 toes. I mean, I looked at his feet and I was like, oh my goodness, those are his dad's feet. So cute. It was perfect. And while he was in my belly, I remember Max Lucado praying for Zealand and praying for his life and seeing him in ministry. And so that, I had felt that too. I was like, this boy is going to be in ministry. God is going to use him. I can't wait to see what this is going to look like. So Zealand, he's born at about 19 months old. We started seeing that he wasn't meeting the, developmental kind of milestones that
Mm-hmm.
normal, kids his age were meeting.
Sure.
So my typical thing, as in, run away to England to learn Spanish, bury my head in the sand situation, I prefer doing that. But with my son, I couldn't bury my head in the sand.
Yeah.
I knew I had to get some, get some answers. So we had early intervention come in, and they diagnosed him with a pervasive developmental delay. Well, developmental delay, that means he's just delayed. He's going to catch up. As time went on, he wasn't catching up as quickly as I would hope.
Mm-hmm.
I would have hoped. His little brother was kind of really on his heels and really putting together, big sentences, like big words. He was able to focus in on stuff. And Zealand wasn't. So at the end of second grade, all the school system got together. Well, let me backtrack. So kindergarten year, I learned a new word for the first time. Mm-hmm. The word IEP. Mm-hmm. Okay? IEP. I'd never heard that word. And it stands for Individualized Educational Program. So because of Zealand's pervasive developmental delay, he had an IEP. So I was so happy. Like, they rolled out a red carpet for him. He was going to have a helper. He was going to have a speech therapy, occupational therapy, because we've been doing that privately already, but he was going to get it at school now. So that was awesome. I was so excited. Second grade year rolls around. At the end of the year, they get together with the pediatrician, all the people from the school system, all like the, the people from the district, from the principal, the vice principal, pediatrician, everybody. And we were supposed to have an IEP meeting. So we're sitting there. It's a big conference room, neon lights above, and it's just super, super formal. Mm-hmm. And so they tell me, Mrs. Gonzalez, Zealand is autistic. Mm. And I was like, what? Yeah. It broke me down so hard. Hmm. Because basically what that statement meant that they were saying my son was broken. Hmm. Well, he can't be broken. He can't be autistic, because you have to remember he's going to have a ministry. Yeah. God's going to use him for something. This is not the way it's supposed to go. This is not the movie and the script I had for him. It was supposed to be different. Yeah. So I had to go through, I went through about 6 months of just anger. Hmm. I was so angry with God. I had to go through mourning. I had to mourn the dreams I had for my kid, for my son, while he was in my belly, throughout his baby life, his toddler life. I had to mourn those dreams, and I was angry with God. And I remember yelling at God. I was in my bed just yelling at God. But you remember in Psalms, as David, he yells at God. He's angry with God. He feels like God has forgotten him. And then the next minute he's praising God. Yeah. And it's amazing to me how God didn't just smack me down at the things I was saying to him. Hmm. Instead, he actually said nothing. He never said a word during that 6-month period, during that mourning process that I had. He never said a word. Hmm. But after I stopped asking the question, why me, why me, why me? And I started asking the right question, which was, why not me? Mm-hmm. Wow. That's when God said, okay, get up, dust yourself off. It's time to fight. Yeah. Okay. So, it's been quite the learning process, trying to, learn how to advocate for your son using all these words you never thought that were never in your vocabulary. Yeah. Pre-vocational. I don't know what that meant. Yeah. Cognitive, XYZ. It's just like, okay, what does this mean? But, you know, the thing with God, he's not going to give you more than you can handle. He's going to equip you for the why not me situations, because when we start asking that question, why not me? God sees something in each one of us that we can't see in ourselves.
Sure.
He sees more strength than we thought possible. He sees more tenacity than we thought possible, because he does not see broken. He sees beautifully, perfectly, wonderfully made in the image. So, I guess the challenge is in your life, what is it in your life that you're saying, why me, not why me? Mm-hmm. Ask God, why not me? Yeah. Okay. What can you do to use this? How can I be a vessel for others, to bring other people into your kingdom? And you know, the truth is, there are times to this day that I still go, God, I don't get it. Yeah. I look at my son, he struggles to communicate, and I'm going, I don't get it. And you know, that's okay. That's okay that we don't get it. We're not supposed to get it. We are servants and followers of Jesus. And at times, he is going to answer our questions and just like answer our prayers, our questions super quick. And sometimes we won't know until we see him in heaven. Yeah. But we trust and we know that we have a good Father who wants the best for us and who is the best director that there could ever be. Yeah. You know, when we watch Titanic, every time I watch it, I always think to myself, maybe this time, she won't let him go. Yeah. Maybe there will be, maybe they'll figure out there really is enough space on that plank for both of them. Every time she lets him go. As she's saying, I'll never let you go. Okay?
Right, exactly.
So then, you know, but the director for that film, that was his vision. That was his plan. That was the way it was supposed to go. We have the ultimate director if we allow him to direct our steps, to direct our stories, to direct the movie of our life in his perfect way, in his perfect will, and not confusing our dreams, our concepts, our stories, our scripts with his will and his way.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Well, thank you for sharing it. But no, this is great, and I love hearing about it. And by the way, it was great to read not only about Zealand, but about Soren, too. Yes. And one of my favorite parts of the book, by the way, everybody read the book, by the way, for more details. But Zealand has some incredible gifts, too, that you talk about in the book. I mean, he even saved somebody's life at one point. You know, yes. It's incredible. But I think my favorite story in the whole book, is when you and Nick were planning on taking Soren out on tour with you just for a short time so that he could have some time with just you guys, because Zealand was taking a lot more care and you wanted to make sure he wasn't neglected. And I wonder if you would mind just kind of telling us Soren's response, what you expected Soren to say to this time alone away from his brother, and then what actually happened.
Okay, so we wanted to take Soren just by himself. The boys are 14 and a half months apart, so they're super close in age. So, you know, Zealand requires a lot of attention, time, and, you know, we just wanted to invest some time into Sosie Bear. That's what we call him, Sosie Bear. So, we had planned to take him out, you know, on like a 4-day run just with him and the band, just, you know, to just hang out with him, because he is such a cool person. Like, you can have full conversations with him. And you're like going, how is this kid like only in 4th grade? He's just, God has given him a gift. So all that to say, so then we tell him, hey, bud, we're going to take you. Brother's going to go and stay with Nana and Tata, and you're going to come with us for a few days. Just to hang out. And he says, his eyes welled up with tears. He goes, I can't live a day without my brother. And I'm like, that was not the response that we were expecting. Yeah. He was supposed to be excited about just being with us. But see, that's the thing about it. God equipped Soren to be the little brother to Zealand. Soren, he is not going to have the life that he probably thought he would have, but he wouldn't know anything different because he's always had a big brother who is Zealand, who is autistic. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to have the life that I possibly pictured, which was, learning from his big brother how to pick up a girl, learning from his big brother how to shave. It's more than likely that little brother, which is already happening, the gap is so wide, but that little brother is basically takes on the role of big brother.
Yeah.
So, but the thing that I think is so interesting is how God made Soren's heart to the fact that he can't live a day without his brother. So we ended up taking big brother with us, and it was super cramped in that Sprinter van. There was not enough space. But Zealand is happy to go with Nana and Tata. He would have been actually happier to go with his grandparents. But he saw his brother's tears, and with Zealand's autism, he doesn't know how to handle emotions. He doesn't get it. It doesn't compute for him. So he was just kind of worried, stunned, okay, am I supposed to do something? So he came with us, and I watch the boys, sometimes that, Zealand will be at school and Soren will be home from school because he's sick or something. And, mm-hmm. and he'll be sitting there and he goes, man, I wish Zealand was home. I have no one to play with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, he has no idea or true concept that his brother's different, because to him, brother is brother, and they are two peas in a pod. They're peas and carrots.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful story. They just both sound like amazing kids, and your whole family, honestly, it sounds like God has done some wonderful rescripting in your life. It's not always what we planned, but it was moving to read about what has been going on in your life over the years. And I again want to thank you for your transparency. And to all our listeners right now, I want to just encourage you all to go to our website at voicesinmyheadpodcast.com, because we'll have links there where you can get the book, and links where you can go to Jaci's website and find out more about her. And Jaci, we haven't even had time to talk about stuff like you raising chickens and your clothing line and all the different things that you have going on. But this has been such a joy to get to sit and talk with you again. And the name of the book is When God Rescripts Your Life: Seeing Value, Beauty, and Purpose When Life is Interrupted. And by the way, listeners, they would make great Christmas presents, so you could purchase them and give them to lots of friends and family. And Jaci, is there anything else that you would like to add to our conversation today before we close out our time together?
Yes. Okay. In the dedication on the book, because when you were talking about, maybe for Christmas presents, stuff like that, mm-hmm. This book is dedicated to anyone who's ever watched a movie more than once and hoped for a different ending. So if you know somebody like that who has watched a movie or their life did not turn out the way that they had planned, and they're right in the middle of it, possibly. Maybe they have a child with special needs. Maybe they have a divorce under their belt. Maybe their parents have split and they now have this really complicated family dynamic that is just not what they had envisioned for their life. Mm-hmm. But if you know somebody like that, then I really do think that this book can help them walk through that, because I don't claim to have all the answers by any means, but I know someone who does.
Yes. Well, thank you. And Jaci Velasquez, thank you for taking time to stop by for another visit today, and thank you for being one of the voices in my head this week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me here this week on Voices in My Head. I hope you'll visit me on my website at rickleejames.com, where you can find out more about me, get my music on vinyl and CD, follow my blog, and even schedule me for a concert or a speaking engagement. Better yet, even a book signing in your neighborhood. You can find all that and more at rickleejames.com. Also, it would mean a great deal to me if you could write a review of this podcast on iTunes. The more positive reviews that we receive, the more visible this podcast will be online. And now for the benediction. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. God bless you, and thank you for listening to Voices in My Head. This is Rick Lee James, and the music you are hearing is from my new album, Thunder. The title track, Thunder, is a never-before-released song by the late Rich Mullins. There are also 12 other tracks made up of original music, hymns, and readings to guide the listener on a journey. You can buy Thunder today on clear vinyl and CD, or stream it on Spotify, Apple Music, and almost every other music streaming service. Thunder, hear it today at rickleejames.com.